Hi, welcome back to the basement. I'm Steve Lewis. As I mentioned in an earlier episode, I became a Beach Boy completist in 1980. Prior to that, I had the Endless Summer collection, I had the Spirit of America collection, I think I'd picked up Good Vibrations as a single, had all the hits, 66 and prior. I had heard Holland and I'd heard Beach Boys Love You, but they were so different from what I expected out of the Beach Boys at the time that they really didn't register with me. In the early part of 1980, I was in a bookstore in the Thomas Mall in Phoenix, Arizona. I don't remember whether it was Walden Books or B. Dalton. If you remember those days, every mall seemed to have a Walden Books at one end and a B. Dalton Books at the other end. Well, in one of those chain stores, I picked up The Beach Boys official authorized biography by Byron Preiss. The cover price was $8.95. I'm sure I didn't pay full price because that would have been too much for me. I'm sure I picked it up on a discount table for $2.99 or $3.98 or something like that. But this was the book that really got me started on seriously collecting the Beach Boys and really made me become a Beach Boy completist and start picking up the albums. It's actually quite a good book. It gives you a lot of information. It sort of tells the story of the Beach Boys with Pet Sounds and Smile. Gives you the first real description of what Smile would have been like, and talks a lot about unreleased recordings. It also, unfortunately, has a whole lot of these illustrations in full color that are just kind of pointless, really. I don't know why they wasted, they had all this budget to do these color items and just did artwork illustrating different songs. But at the time, this was like the first really serious, decent Beach Boy book out there. I know that because I looked for others after I read this, and there were some out there, but nothing compared to this. And on the last page of this, they list a lot of Beach Boy unreleased songs at the time, which apart from the Smile tracks, things like Land Ahoy, When Girls Get Together, Loop de Loop, California Feeling, San Miguel, things that we know now. It's Over Now is listed. Things that we know now, but at the time were just very intriguing song titles. So this is the book that got me started. Now the new Beach Boy album at the time, although it had been out for a while, nearly a year, was L.A. The Light album. I picked this book up probably a month or so prior to the release of the Beach Boys' Keeping the Summer Alive album. And of course, at the time, 1980, my assumption was that the future of Beach Boy releases would be much like the past of Beach Boy releases. The last 20 years, I figured, like most people, would look kind of like the next 10 or 15, that the Beach Boys would continue to put out a new album every year or so for the next 10, 15 years, probably with mixed results. Of course, I thought maybe they'll hit a groove, maybe they'll get into something, make some great albums. Probably it's going to be albums like LA that are disappointing, but still have some tracks on them that make them worthwhile to me. That's really not what happened, of course. After Keeping the Summer Alive, there was a big break until 1985's Beach Boys. Of course, Dennis passed away at the time. In 1981, I went to my first Beach Boy concert, and based on the shape Brian Wilson was in at the time, I also didn't expect that Brian Wilson would really be around very much longer. Fortunately, that didn't come to pass. He put out a solo album in 1988 that was terrific, the Smile collection in 2004, and some great albums since then, that Lucky Old Sun, No Peer Pressure. That was a very happy surprise. But my Beach Boy collection today looks nothing like I would have imagined it looking back in 1980. There's very little new music post-1980, at least not Beach Boy albums. But I've got a whole lot of old music, previously unreleased songs like those listed in Byron Preiss's authorized biography. The first place that we began to get unreleased Beach Boy recordings was the next year, 1981, in this very briefly available Australian collection, Brian Wilson Rarities, The Beach Boys. Now, most of what's on here is not actually Beach Boy rarities. Most of it are productions that Brian Wilson did for other people. You've got the Glenn Campbell single, I Guess I'm Dumb, written and produced by Brian Wilson, which is a great, great record. One of the finest things Brian Wilson was ever involved in. It fits very nicely between the second side of Beach Boys today and Pet Sounds. Some great tracks from the Honeys, some really nice stuff. Also a lot of B-sides. The Dennis and Rumbo single is here. Lots of things that had not been available on album before, and things that were very difficult to find. But the only really unreleased thing on here is a live version of Ray Charles' What I'd Say by the Beach Boys from their 1964 tour of Australia, which closes the album. Inside, you get this little paragraph, and I'm sure you can't read it, but this little paragraph that talks about other songs written by the Beach Boys and initially recorded by other people. And it recreates some of the errors that were found in the Byron Priest book, including that there is a song by Ray Sharp called The Day You Left Me, which was written by a B. Wilson, but it wasn't Brian Wilson, it was someone named Bob Wilson. As in the Byron Priest book, they list the song Tell Someone You Love Them by Desi, Dino, and Billy as being a Brian Wilson composition. It's actually written by Billy Hinchy of Desi, Dino, and Billy. The final song in this paragraph of Beach Boy written material is On and On She Goes by Ray Sharp. Now, the Byron Priest book doesn't mention it. None of the other later Beach Boy books mention it. I finally figured out what it was. The song is a medley of a very simple, repetitive thing called On and On She Goes, coupled with Me Tonight from Smiley Smile. And the whole thing is just credited to Brian Wilson and Carl Wilson, hence the confusion. But it's not a new or previously unknown Beach Boy song. It's just a medley of this very simple, repetitive thing with Me Tonight, which we all know from Smiley Smile. In 1982, a couple of things happened. Early in the year, we got the release of Surf's Up, the Beach Boys on Record, 1961 through 1981. This is a super detailed discography on all the releases, everything Beach Boy related, sets straight some of the mistakes from the Brian Priest book. Of course, it makes a few errors of its own. As time goes by, we learn more and more about these things and errors get corrected. But this is still a key resource and something that I go back to even now. One of the best purchases I ever made as far as Beach Boy information goes. It also lists and puts into context a lot of the unreleased Beach Boy material. Byron Priest listed a lot of stuff. This lists a lot more. Let us know that the vaults were really, really brimming with unreleased Beach Boy material. Also in 1982, a little later on, we got the first actual release of some previously unreleased Beach Boy material on this album, Beach Boy Rarities. Terrible, terrible generic cover, but it's got some really cool stuff on it. Here for the first time, we're beginning to get the release of some previously unreleased Beach Boy tracks. In fact, 7 of the 13 songs, in one way or another, are previously unreleased Beach Boy music. Starting off with 3 outtakes from roughly the Wild Honey period, Little Help from My Friends, The Letter, and a long version of I Was Made to Love Her, the Stevie Wonder track. Second side kicks off with the first release of an alternate version of Good Vibrations, of which obviously many, many more would be released later on. Followed with Land Ahoy, which is an outtake from the Surf and Safari album and sounds it. It really sounds like that period. It's actually a pretty good track. It's actually better than some of the things that they released on Surf and Safari. So I don't know why that one stayed in the can when things like Cuckoo Clock and Chug-a-Lug made the cut. But anyway, nice to have it here. There's a live version of All I Want to Do from London in 1968. And you also get the Auld Lang Syne from the Beach Boy Christmas album without Dennis's voiceover wishing everybody a Merry Christmas, so you can actually hear the vocals on that. It came with nice liner notes, some detailed stuff. Some of this again now is kind of inaccurate as time has gone by and we've gotten more detail and learned more. We know a little bit more. The inner sleeve is actually way more interesting than the outer sleeve. And again, it was available only briefly. I forgot to mention this album also included the first release of the German version of In My Room, Ganz Allein, and the rest of the album is filled out with the usual alternate mixes and non-album B-sides. But pretty promising release of unreleased material. Finally beginning to see some of the things in the vault. Interestingly, some of the things on here had not been listed in either the Byron Priest book or in the Surf's Up book. So began to also hint that there were a lot of things that we didn't know about out there. After that, of course, the bootleggers began to step up their game in the 80s, and we got a lot of unreleased Beach Boy material on bootleg. But it wasn't until the early 90s when Capitol Records began releasing the original Beach Boy albums as twofers on CD for the first time with bonus tracks that we really began to see the vaults open up and get some of this unreleased Beach Boy music. We'll have to talk about that next time. Otherwise, this is going to run for hours and hours. Thanks for watching. Obviously, as the vaults begin to really open up in the 90s, there's much, much more to come. Let me know if I missed anything from this earlier period. Really appreciate it. Please like, subscribe, comment. Talk to you soon. Thanks. Bye.